resonated with your experience today?
Continually surrender these hobbling demands.
Yeah.
Because we just did step 10 at a meeting before this in Al-Anon, and continue, they say, is the second most important word in the 12 steps, or one of them at least, next to God. And surrender is so important, because surrender, I think, comes before doing what I can do to make myself happy.
Yeah.
And I was at AJ's meeting the other night, and she came up with this technique, which was so helpful. I want to share with everyone, because I remember I asked my sister once a couple of years ago, I was like, what exactly does it mean to accept something? What does that really mean? She said, well, she's an old Al-Anon person. She said, I think it's when you stop fighting. And but still, it eluded me a little bit on how to accept. And AJ had this technique where you tense up really, really hard for a couple seconds and then just go, I accept it. And I was like, that is so cool. I love that, because it just physically helps me to let go and surrender.
Yeah, do it again. Go through the
You
process
know,
again.
just however you want. You can do, like, if you're in a board meeting and you can't do that,
Yeah, right.
you can dig your toes into the floor, or squeeze your fingers together or something. I came up with squeezing your knees together really, really hard.
Yeah.
But no
Well,
one
it's that process of creating tension and letting it go. See, it's that tension and release, right? We talked
Yeah,
about steps are based on that. Tension, they create a tension, and there's a release that follows. There's a tension and a release that follows, and that's it. So and look, that is life, isn't it?
it's
It's all
hard
about,
to
that's how we
surrender sometimes, to like let go just of it's like
Yeah.
you want something your way, just hard to let it go.
Yeah.
But that helps. That's very helpful.
God, we had a powerful meeting last week, didn't we? When I took you through the reading in this chapter of Victoria's experience in therapy and that emotional sobriety weekend that I did. And I hope one of the things that you walked away with, and if you're just listening to this talk tonight, then please go back and listen to the YouTube video that was posted about last week's meeting, because it's a very, very important meeting that we had. Victoria went through a lot of pain, and that's necessary. See, it's necessary for us to experience what we are experiencing if we're going to move to a different place. And, it's the same thing that we say, self-acceptance, and we can think of allowing yourself to experience what you're experiencing as an experience of accepting yourself and what's going on with yourself in the moment. We have a lot of trouble just being able to deal with what is and accepting what's going on with us. We fight it. We fight it tooth and nail at times. I don't want to cry. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to, even sexual feelings, sometimes we block off and don't want to feel. So what we say is if you block off any feeling, let's say your pain, your joy will also be compromised. Because that's just the way we work. If we allow our full expression of ourselves and can enjoy it, then we can flow with our experience. If we can't allow our full expression of ourselves and enjoy that, then we cannot support ourselves to allow ourselves to experience whatever we're experiencing. So this becomes really critical, because I wanted to kind of put forgiveness in a certain context this week. See, one of the things that creates emotional sobriety, and you could hear it at the end of Bill's letter. If we took Bill's letter all the way to the end, well, I think I even salvaged a part of this in the talk I do, is that at the end he talks about, I found a place in bright sunshine. And he talks about being peaceful. wow, being peaceful. How do we get to that place? How do we get to that place of serenity? And what does forgiveness have to do with this? Well, I'm glad you're asking that question because I want to answer that question tonight. And it's very, very important question. You see, one of the things that emotional sobriety is about completing unfinished business. Now, what does that mean? When we have unfinished business, it means that there's an experience that we have had in our life that we have not yet come to peace with. I like to think of it as an undigested experience. So, what do I mean by that? What do I mean that an experience is undigested? Well, first of all, what creates an undigested experience is an unwillingness to flow with your pain, to flow with your sadness, to flow with your anger, your rage, or whatever is coming up for you, and to take it all the way through, to cry all the tears you need to cry, to scream all the screams you need to scream, to shout the words that you never got a chance to say, to have an experience of being witnessed like you were never witnessed before. Now, that full expression of ourselves that we need to be able to support in order to finish unfinished business means that, or allows us to start to digest the experience. Now, you've heard me talk before that through life, we end up desensitizing ourselves. We desensitize ourselves to our feelings, to what we want, to what's important to us. And instead of staying connected to ourselves, which would be having empathy and having a sincere attitude towards ourselves, we adopt a set of shoulds. And that becomes what we are connected to. So we lose connection to ourselves, and instead we honor and pay tribute to these shoulds. I think the Bible says, "Thou shalt not covet false gods." Right. That's a false god for you guys. When you now allow your life to be run by shoulds, you have turned your life over to your false self. And this is what struggle that most, of us have. I don't know many people at all that were raised and encouraged to develop into who they are. We got these messages from our family, from our culture, from our own reactions to what was going on, to our way of surviving, to what we call our adaptation or adjustment to whatever dynamics were going on. We say we come to our, this desensitized experience legitimately. We cannot in this culture stay connected to ourselves and adapt to this culture and be normal. If you adapt to an abnormal culture, you're abnormal. It's just no ifs, ands, or about it. This society is way too polarized in terms of, we know that in terms of what we see going on politically right now, but it's also polarized around the fact that it's so materialistically oriented that many of these social critics have said that the problem within our society is that we believe I am more the more things I have. So what I have determines my self-esteem, not who I am. Well, as Bill Wilson said, he thought that was way out of balance, that we've really forgotten the importance of character. And that's what happens in emotional sobriety is we start to recover our lost self, and we start to recover our true self. And one of the ways we do that is by starting to deal with some of the unfinished business we have that has fragmented us and torn us to pieces through life. The more fragmented we are, the more out of touch we are, and the sicker we are emotionally. I'll say that again. The more fragmented we are, the more sicker we are, the more out of touch with ourselves we are, the more difficulty we're going to have being able to live and enjoy the life we're having. Those shoulds are just going to keep showing up over and over and over again. Well, that sounds and feels depressing, doesn't it? Because it is. See, the other part of this is that as we recover our lost self, we have to go back and start to clean up some of this unfinished business we have. We have to deal with the trauma. And I love the metaphor that Ernie Larson uses, that trauma is like, especially a childhood trauma, is like fracturing your bone, and there's bone fragments that never reattached, and they're just in the body floating around. He says after 15, 20, 30, 40 years, those fragments start to work themselves to the surface to come out. Well, as soon as they break your skin, they hurt like hell. But that's a sign that something's wrong, that we need to pull that fragment out of our body and get rid of it because it's an alien part of our body. And so that depression that happens in people that are sitting out there and that are experiencing this, that depression comes from not integrating some of the experience they've had. You see, when you integrate an experience, it becomes a part of you. Just like if I was to take a bite of an apple, I don't have an apple here, I would take a bite of it. That sounds actually pretty good. I like Honeycrisp right now. But if I took a bite of that apple starts out as an apple. If I'm differentiated. If I hold the apple here, it's an apple. It's not Alan, right? Alan's over here, the apple's over here. I take a bite of it. That bite begins a process that apple now gets transformed into Alan and is no longer an apple. I chew it up. My teeth help me. I mix saliva with it so I can swallow it easier, but there's also enzymes and being mixed in with it at the same time. It goes into my heart, my stomach, I should say, and our stomach starts to twist. It actually has muscles that twist around. It's like a blender. Starts creating a mulch, right? That can get passed through the stomach into our intestinal tract, and the intestines start to take from that food, from whatever we've eaten, what it needs. It takes chemicals, maybe takes sugar, maybe takes proteins, takes vitamins, all kinds of stuff. Everything our body needs is extracted from whatever we've eaten, and then we're ready to get rid of it. At some point in that process, you would be hard pressed to say that's still an apple because it becomes Alan. Starts out as an apple that's differentiated from me. At the end, it becomes Alan. So that's a very important thing. What we want to do is we want to take any painful situation, a situation that's hurt us and that caused a great grievance. And once again, only when we're ready to do it, and be able to process that experience in such a way that we take what was foreign from us and it becomes us. So we extract from that experience that which will grow us, and that which is going to diminish us, we get rid of in terms of urination or defecation. We let go of what's not healthy for us, and we create an experience that is. Okay, now it's a good time to ask that question. Did you, someone have a question, I thought, for a minute ago? No. Okay, I thought I saw a question in the chat. Okay, so that's the process, right? We have to be able to digest this experience that we're having to the point where it becomes us. We have to go through and feel a lot of feelings we didn't want to feel. And this is what you saw when I read, the work I had done with Victoria. You saw the pain that she experienced. You heard about it. I guess you didn't see it. You felt it probably if, you were open yourself to the experience we were having. Well, same is true for you and me. We have a lot of grievances, and those grievances typically start with us being pain, in pain or devastated or both. And we just can't sit still for a meeting. Okay, so I was trying to think where I want to go next with this. I think where I want to go next with this is to start to introduce you to the process of forgiveness. But I want to do that by reading the definition from the American Psychological Association about forgiveness. So they define it, the APA, forgiveness as putting aside feelings of resentment towards an individual who has committed a wrong, who's been unfair or hurtful or otherwise harmed you in some way. Forgiveness is not equated with reconciliation or excusing another. And it is not merely accepting what happened or ceasing to be angry. Rather, it involves a voluntary transformation of one's feelings, attitudes, and behavior towards the individual. How is this achieved? Well, it's achieved by working through a forgiveness process or a ritual. And we will be exposing you guys to that, so that one can no longer be dominated by resentment dominated by resentment and can express compassion, generosity, or the like towards the individual that they are struggling with. Well, that's what we want to talk about. What kind of a ritual is needed? What kind of a process is needed to get to the other side, or to begin the process of getting to the side of wanting to forgive someone, of wanting to let go of the grievance you have towards them? So next week, I will take you into that process. But today, I wanted to show you the importance of resolving unfinished business, because the more unfinished business I resolve, the more I feel like what Kathy talked about. I'm holding on to this, I'm holding on to this, and then I release it. That's what Herb talks about forgiveness, is going from this to this, right? Releasing them. Well, in one sense, what we're releasing is our feelings towards them. That's what we're letting go of. And sometimes that can be a very difficult thing. And that's what I wanted to touch base on a little bit before I wrap up tonight, is what is our resistance to forgiveness? What might be going on, even at an unconscious level, that might be contributing to a lack of willingness to forgive a person or to be involved in a process that would lead to forgiveness? Well, let's ponder this question for a minute. What would make us not want to forgive someone? What would make it hard for us to go ahead and say to some people, I'm sorry, I've really hurt you, and I want to know what I can do to make you whole, to actually work the 10th step? Well, if you're finding yourself in that kind of a situation or in that kind of a pickle, it's very important. First of all, if you can, find someone that can help you with the process. But if you can't, then you're going to need to do this on your own. It's kind of like giving birth with a midwife, only you're both the person giving birth and the midwife. So the first thing you do is you um, get a piece of paper out and you're going to do some. So this is if you're stuck. If you're stuck forgiving someone, here's an unsticking process. So you get a piece of paper and you put on the top of it, obstacles to my forgiveness. And you're going to do some incomplete sentence work. And the first incomplete sentence you write down is forgiving that person would mean, first thing that comes to your mind, at least 6 to 10 endings. Forgiving that person would mean, another great one would be, if I forgive that person, how would my life change? If I forgive them, how would my life change? Holding on to my resentment, to my bitterness, to my grievances is good because, write down what it does for you. Yeah. So those kinds of questions will get you to really start to look at what is going on. Why don't we want to let go? I remember Roger and I worked with a client one time, and what he said was, this client, I mean, he was really stuck with his dad and resentful all the time. And we started to explore, well, what is this resentment doing for you, right? What is this wisdom behind this resentment that's interfering with your life? And what he got to was that if I let you, if I allow you to make amends and I forgive you, you're going to hurt me again. If I really don't like the coach, or if in this particular case, I'm thinking of this young man who felt so obstructed by this coach in terms of playing on the team. And he just could not understand. So what does he get by not going up and trying to work through that situation with the coach? Well, believe it or not, as much as he wanted to play, there was a part of him afraid to play because he might not do well. So a part of him that wasn't being proactive was creating a situation where the coach wouldn't play him because he was afraid of how he'd perform. Now, see, that was happening on an unconscious level. But see, if he sat there and focused all his energy on what the coach was doing wrong, he would miss the lesson. And in all our experience, especially the experiences we have that are so charged, it becomes an important thing to support ourselves, to have the necessary experience with what's going on so we can grow from it and become better people. So explore your resistance. If you're stuck and you don't want to, don't pathologize it. Don't say, I just want to stay sick. Try to give that part of you a voice. I will never let you forgive that person because, answer that one a few times. Okay. Well, I think that's a wrap for me. Let's call Tom and Herb in and see what they'd like to say on this. And next week we'll start to dig in to forgiveness. Hey, Tom.
Are those tennis ball people on your shirt?
Yes.
They tennis ball people? Okay, I was working on it, man. I wasn't paying any attention to what you were saying. I was just looking at your shirt, but it's like, I like it.
Hey, Alan, the definition that you provided, can you either let me know where to get that so I could post it, or you just repeat where it came from?
Yeah, it's on page 229 in my book.
All right, I'll get it in the chat in a minute.
Hey, Herb.
Hello. Well, how would you guys like to kick off the discussion?
I'm open. You want me to go, Herb?
You're already going.
Well, but I can stop after a few minutes, a couple of sentences. I can't. It's like, it's, several things that just, and I did what I usually do, is just write down the associations I'm having with what you're doing. And it's, to state the obvious, it's not forgive and forget, it's forgive and remember. Because we need to, we don't have to forget. We get to protect ourselves. We get to carry the lessons forward, and that's what helps us. There's no guarantee that we won't get hurt again, and there's no guarantee that we won't be hurt by the same person, the same situation. But we're in better shape if we are learning the lessons and learning when to step back, when to avoid certain things, and maybe even when to avoid certain people. The notes I made here, I'm just going to go down the list here. It's like you brought up for me, Alan, the whole deal of just reminding ourselves, there is no successful spiritual bypass. Forgiving, forgiving is not stuffing. It's not just, I don't even, I even made I didn't have a difference with the definition you read. It says it's putting aside resentments. Based on what you were saying and what I think too, it's not that. It's working through those resentments. It's not, to putting, a lot of times that's what we think we're doing, is we're trying to put things aside, just ignore that, let that be over there. And, forgive, because that's what you got to do to be a good person. It's like, it's like, and I think we may have different angles on this, but we'll be on this kind of the same page, that this is, once again, just like everything else we're doing, is following nature. We're following a natural process. And, one of the things that I think about is, that I tell people all the time is, if you imagine a timeline, and so events happen along these timelines. So an event happened back in my past here. I didn't process the feelings. I didn't get in touch with the feelings. People will say, I don't know why I'm going through this, because this happened a long time ago. Well, feelings never exist in time. Feelings only exist in the present tense. And so that means and this is how all this stuff works, and why when you get into therapy, everything gets worse, because you basically go into this space where you become aware of all of the stored emotions that you're carrying with unprocessed stuff. And so when you're doing that around situations that you're looking at forgiveness, is I'm just going to toss out the idea that it's back to the idea that it's our natural state. Forgiveness is our natural state when we're not holding on to old pain. So our job is to go in and process the stuff for ourselves. And the truth is, when we do that, our relationship to the memory of that thing on the timeline actually changes. I mean, we don't have to force it. We don't have to change it. We don't have to say, I need to think this way or that way. It's like, it's just, it's systems theory. When one thing's change, everything else shifts around. So that, that's going to happen. And the last thing I would just say is, and I can't emphasize this enough, is like, the first step to forgiveness is giving yourself permission to not forgive. It's like, because only then is it a choice for you. It's like the moment it's not a choice. The moment it's you know, and take your time getting through this stuff. It's like because and it is very much like what Kathy was talking about as far as relaxing after the tension. Forgiveness is such a wonderful feeling when it's genuine, when you because it's a big let go. And yeah, I love this chapter too, by the way, Alan. That's all I got.
Thanks, Tom, because I needed my pump to be primed. I got lots of notes here, but I couldn't get any traction, and a couple of the phrases that you used gave me the traction
Oh, good.
that you know, we can read about it and we can read definitions from a variety of resources, and they're really clear. But what's the motive? And my experience with all of this is that it obviously comes from the 12 step, but I'm not going to refer to that right now, maybe later on some other time. But people are afraid, number one, because it has a religious connotation, like the Our Father and the St. Francis prayer, and the wonderful wisdom there, but it's crisp, it's not explanatory. It's paradoxical, so it seems mysterious and or out of reach, with a religious kind of, and it's what I discovered was it's really psychological, it's really personal. It's not outside of me to understand and or to do something because, and I think one of you or maybe both of you mentioned it's something that a good person would do, or that it's a suggestion to some should again. And there's a terrible misunderstanding as to what it means. That's why I do this, that to release, to give it some kind of a visceral sense of, oh, it's letting go. It's for my healing. There's the motive. It's really for my healing. Some of the things that I put in a reflection, and it was reinforced by Fred Luskin's material from research in clinical psychology on forgiveness. That is, a lot of people think that to forgive is to approve of what they did,
Right.
or to exonerate them, and or to minimize what they did, or God forbid, to reconcile with them. And none of that's true. And the key word that I put into my meditation based on my experience with it is it's a decision. And I think Alan said that in his definition. It's a choice. I have the free will, which is the surgical tool for the removal of, whether it's for a resentment or not. I wrote down some other things that came to mind as both of you had talked, and that was disappointment. I didn't get the expected outcome. My needs were not met. My demands were not met. I was betrayed. I was harmed. And some of this is legitimately objective and horrible, unfortunate, and some of it's even criminal. I mean, we heard these wonderful stories about the felons that have received forgiveness from all kinds of mischief in other people's lives. And so mostly dealing with men, they have this incredible need to be right. And if in fact they're going to forgive, it's almost like they're making themselves wrong. And that's not it. Again, it's a misunderstanding of the nature of the resentment or the disturbance, the negative reaction or feeling that I'm holding. Oh, let's see, where's that all going? I have no idea. I think, Alan, you mentioned something about undigested experience, and I just really liked the term And so much of it is unconscious. And I did not know that until I became conscious through a process. And now I'll relate to the step process of resentment, because that's where I first encountered
Mhm.
uh, seeking the exact nature of my suffering. My suffering wasn't because my father was an asshole. My suffering today at age 48, when I was doing this work, was because I was holding on to the negative feelings that I had developed, and they were just part of my perception of reality in a very unconscious and unevaluated way. And so, Tom, you mentioned the therapeutic aspect of this, and I don't mean by therapy, but I do mean the therapeutic healing that comes from, number one, understanding, acknowledging that it is true, this did happen.
Mhm.
And it's a great word I heard somebody else say, it was unfortunate. It's not good or
Mhm.
bad. It's not fair or unfair. It's
Mhm.
just, I mean, in the context of emotional sobriety, that one word I think just is the bullseye.
Mhm.
Yep, it was unfortunate with all my empathy that I can generate. It's really unfortunate. It happened. But if it's over 24 hours, and here's where I come to be a hard ass,
Mhm.
get over it.
Mhm.
You just get over it. I mean, I don't mean to dismiss it or in any way minimize it, but now it's your job. Now it's my job to deal with the reality that was unfortunate. And
Mhm.
and that process that Alan talked about, we'll get into some of the details and the mechanics of it. It's a verifiable, credible human process. And we can be released, and we can be released from the deepest, deepest, deepest emotion, negative reaction
Mhm.
to our history.
Yep. I just want to jump on and reinforce what you said about the unconscious part, because that's so important. And it's that, and that's the piece where we d- when we start to look, that's why I say when we go to therapy, things get worse, because when you start looking in the storerooms in there, you're going to find shit that you didn't have any idea was there. It's not like we've been consciously thinking, I'm not going to deal with this stuff. We've been dealing with it. We've been surviving. We've been dealing with it the way our defense system works to deal with it. But it's like, I really appreciate what you're saying about that, because it's like, don't put, again, this is one of those places where you don't should yourself, don't put yourself down. When you start discovering extra stuff, it's like it really becomes kind of like some process, like a whack-a-mole thing, where after one thing's taken care of, another thing pops up, and one solution is the next problem, and you keep going. And and one of the things we tell each other, and we need to be reminding each other of is like, when we're going through all that stuff, is that this is natural, this is, you're doing it right, this is the if you're experiencing all that, then that means you're on the right path. So
And while you're experiencing that, wonderful reminder to people that you're on the right path,
well,
that you're suffering. Absolutely.
yeah.
But look at the horizon, have the vision. Freedom is on the
Mhm.
other side of forgiveness.
Mhm.
That's really the key. That's the value proposition. I'm
Mhm.
going to go through this soul grind because there's freedom on the other side.
Mhm. Yeah, look at the horizon, I like that.
Well said, you guys. Well said. So is Tom Potash? No, I think he might have left, right? No, you're still there, Tom? You
I'm
want
still
to?
here. I got the
Yeah.
recording, so I realized I got to stick around. I'm a little recovering from a little something, guys, a little under the weather, but as you were going through the open-ended questions, one thing which popped up for me is if I forgave that person, I think was the question.
Mhm.
I'd be responsible for my own behavior. as long as I stayed in the blame mode and holding on to that resentment, it meant I had a reason, incorrect, but a reason in my own head of, well, you would act this way too if you had, fill in the blank, right? There was a point where I was like, oh, I get to be free if I forgive, but then I got no excuses, right? It was a real awakening to come to that conclusion. Wanting to be free was much more important to me than to live a life of victimhood. So
Well, that's how this, I think, fits into emotional sobriety perfectly, because that's taking responsibility for my life. And I did not.
Yeah.
And didn't know that until I began a process of getting deeper underneath.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I want to say, because this brings us back to what Alan was talking about evaluating the resistance to this. And it's like, man, I had no problem with that when he started talking about evaluating the resistance to it, because I knew, because I mean, that was a lot. I did a lot of work with it. And what I know is, well, first of all, I come from a family of a long line of non-forgivers, and people who they just disown everything, everybody, everything. And my family, I have two brothers that I don't even know where they are, and haven't talked to them in six years. They don't want to talk to anybody, so we can't even reach them. But the other thing the personal thing I liked being pissed off and focusing at people. I can feel it in my body right now. I got high off of being pissed off at people and them doing me wrong. And I felt like a fucking gunslinger. I was going to get them, or I was going to, sometimes it was about directly communicating. Other times it was about writing letters. And I thought, this is a clever way of doing this. And it's like, I just loved it. And it's like, so the idea of letting go, it was letting go of another kind of addiction.
That's a great way to describe it, Tom.
I was mean. I loved being mean, and
Well,
that gave me the right. That gave me the right to be mean. It's like, that's what I thought. It's like, it's okay. I could be mean and cruel to people now that I'm feeling that this is done to me. Yeah.
it reminds me of something I was going to say earlier. I was doing this one session with Roger, and it was this young man who's had unbelievable potential. And his dad was very, very successful in real estate, unbelievably successful. And every time that this dad would give this young man an opportunity to step into business, he would become flaky. He wouldn't show up. He'd do half-assed job, was much more capable. And other times he would do great. And it always led to his father being very angry with him, disappointed in him, and they go through the cycle. And as Roger and I were working with him, we decided that we had to figure out what was going on. How was he dealing with his grievance towards his dad? And what he ended up happening, we had him sit in his chair and said, I will never give you the satisfaction of seeing me successful.
That's it.
Because I hate you so much.
Mm.
I mean, think about that for a minute. His resentment and anger towards his dad was so great that he was living his life to get revenge by not giving his father a satisfaction that he was going to have a successful life. Incredible.
I get that. That's just
Oh, I
familiar
mean,
to
a
me.
lot of people get it, and
Yeah.
it's like we would be blown away to say it because it's so unconscious, as you were saying, Herb. You wouldn't, if you would say that out loud, you'd realize how. And when he said it, that's what happened. He goes, "Oh my God, it's not his fault. It's what I've been doing all these years with the feelings I've had. It's how I'm dealing with them." Yeah, what he did to me wasn't good and it was harmful, and I have to work on my self-esteem. But my lack of achievement is me holding on to this grievance.
I think the Buddhists have a saying, resentment is like taking poison, hoping the other person dies.
And that's what this young man was doing, wasn't he? I mean,
Mhm.
it's like, I mean, I'm going to show you, and you put your hand on the table and pick up a hammer and hit it. How does that feel? How do you like me doing that? I mean, okay. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I mean, but that's what happens. See, we cannot. You see, that's the other thing that Freud was brilliant about. He said, what is put in the unconscious is becomes it goes into a space that's atemporal. It
Mhm.
doesn't change with time and experience.
Mm,
It's like you stick it in this other part of the brain that doesn't mature. And
Mhm.
what happens, that's why we say when you bring this subconscious, that who you are today, your evolution has a chance to work with that experience and process it differently than when you had it before.
Right.
It makes sense when you think it's atemporal. It hasn't changed with time.
so it's like it's happening now, and the consciousness gives you a time frame of history so that I can see it's not happening now.
Yeah.
That's
It,
Right.
really good. I like that a
And
lot.
I've got
isn't that it's amazing.
But
tools
we're
and
responsible
maturity
for the feelings that are right. They are always now.
Right
So
now.
we are responsible for that. Yeah.
And that's one of the things you can only until you get conscious about these things, you can't go through the process of differentiation. And
Right.
see, that's what you're saying, Herb, is that when it comes up here, now I can differentiate between now and then.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's kind of like trauma too.
Well, I would say,
Very
oh,
much. Very
trust me,
much. That's it.
trauma and forgiveness, if you
Mhm.
took two Venn diagrams, there's an overlap
Yeah.
between these two. Because if you don't work through that trauma, you'll never get to the forgiveness part. You cannot, and that's what people unfortunately do. They try to spiritual bypass. I'll just forgive them.
Right.
Well, well, if
No,
you can,
that will,
we
yeah.
can do it. We'll tip our hats to you. We say about that, or somebody could drink normally, but there's what is a price must be paid. There's no easier, softer way. See, that's what we know, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of people, leave recovery and don't deal with some of this stuff because it's very painful. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes way my Robert Novelli, a neuropsychologist that I trained with for a couple years, he said, what we're asking people to do is cut open their veins and bleed for us.
Mhm.
And that's what recovery asks you to do. If you're going to really get full recovery, at some point you got to open up those veins and bleed for a while.
Well, the other thing I'm thinking as I listening to your language and the fact that I'm an accidental therapist and I'm an English major, is that in the sentence "I forgive you" or "I'm supposed to forgive you," you are the object of that verb of forgive. It's like so even just saying "I'm going to forgive you" has got me turned around. The better sentence is "I want to forgive." I want to forgive. That's me in the present. It really doesn't. It doesn't have that. As always, we get around to it. It doesn't have that much to do with you. You may feel it. You may benefit from it. It's whatever. But it's like it's really me forgiving.